You are listening to the Primitive Intelligence Podcast, episode 615, More Cryptids of Pennsylvania. This is a continuation of sorts of episode 508, Cryptids of Pennsylvania, that I did with Rocco last season, where we talked about devil monkeys, the Pocono Wild Man, some Bigfoot encounters, and a couple of personal encounters and experiences him and I both had, including the ghost restaurant and whatever the hell that thing was. It was in my driveway that night. And you might think, how many cryptids can one state have? Oh, don't worry. I've got 8 for this episode, and there's more. But we'll get into those. Going to do something different with some of the stories and the testimonies. I ran through a text-to-speech generator just to differentiate them from what I'm saying. So we'll see how that works out, see how it sounds. Let me know what you think. If there is a cryptid, whether it's Pennsylvania or not, that you want to hear me research, let me know. podcast@primitiveintelligence.com. I love hearing your comments. In fact, one of these is from a request from one of the listeners. You know who you are. You'll know as soon as I say it. So without any further ado, because we got 8 creepy cryptids here to talk about from Pennsylvania, without any further ado, the Primitive Intelligence Podcast starts now. So before we jump into these stories and news reports, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out. As I was doing my research and I was reading these, a name kept popping up. Someone who had done a lot of research and done a lot of reporting and posted a lot of stories and contributed to a lot of stories. A man by the name of Lou Bernard. He's a writer for the Pennsylvania Wilds, the PA Wilds website. He's also a paranormal investigator. He's done a lot of work to bring these stories out to people. I don't know Lou. I don't know Mr. Bernard, but I do appreciate the work that he's put in, as all the people that report these stories and put them out there, so the rest of us has something to read. This is really cool stuff. It's great that it's not lost to people not talking about. So thank you to Mr. Bernard. Thank you to all the investigators and writers who put this information out there. It is very much appreciated. Also, this is my 3rd time recording this because, well, I just didn't like the way it was going the first time. The second time I got down to I got down to number 8, and I just went over to my recorder to check the time, and nothing had recorded. So I'm going through this for like 3.5 times I've gone through all this stuff. So I'm going to take a sip of tea here, and then we're going to get into the stories. So like I said, Pennsylvania's got a lot of cryptids, a lot of stories. Some of them may be the same creature. You'll see some similarities in some of them. Some of them completely different. But the first one is by request, and that is the Snarley Yow. And you might be thinking, if you've ever heard of the Snarley Yow, you might think to yourself, well, that's not Pennsylvania. That's Virginia, West Virginia. And I was going to do it anyway, because it's pretty close. But the one website that I pulled information from had a list of the Snarley Yow's habitats where they've been reported. Shenandoah Valley, Blue Ridge Mountains, Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, Western Virginia, Tennessee, Western North Carolina, Northwestern Georgia, Northern Maryland, New Jersey, and Southern Pennsylvania. So this counts as a Pennsylvania cryptid. I couldn't find anything specifically on Pennsylvania, but not all these had locations on them. The Snarley Yow is a mysterious creature that straddles the line between paranormal and corporeal realms, causing fear and psychological distress in its victims without leaving any physical evidence. Believed to be a hybrid of a dark specter and an English fox and coonhound, weird mix, its origins trace back to the late 18th century in the upper Potomac Valley. The first documented sightings of the Snarley Yow involved a spectral being resembling a shadowy dog-like creature with glowing red eyes and a haunting cry. Its attacks were purely psychological, leaving no tangible evidence. However, subsequent generations of Snarley Yows seemed to be stronger and more versatile, possessing both paranormal abilities and physical attributes. The creature can transition between two forms, a shadowy ethereal form and a corporeal fiendish form. In its shadow form, it appears as a dark gray or black figure, colorless eyes, resembling a two-dimensional shadow. While in this form, it can cause psychological harm to its victims, such as paranoia or panic attacks, but cannot inflict physical harm. It can change its size, it can vanish, and emit its distinctive snarling howl. In its corporeal form, it resembles a large English fox and coonhound, with dark blue fur, sagging skin, and in this form, it can hunt small game, reproduce, and cause physical harm, but it's vulnerable to silver weaponry. Horses are sensitive to the presence of Snarley Yows and may exhibit nervous behavior in their presence. Despite its fearsome reputation, there have been cases of Snarley Yows behaving non-aggressively towards humans, though interaction with the creature is generally discouraged due to its unpredictable nature. Throughout history, sightings of the Snarley Yow have been reported in various locations, spanning from the 1790s to the modern day. In the late 18th century, local inns in its territory shared stories of a ghastly dog with glowing eyes that caused fear among animals. During the American Civil War era, reports emerged of a black dog lurking in Maryland's South Mountain summit, impervious to bullets. In the 1880s, a man encountered a formidable black dog on a rocky path, which seemed impervious to his attacks, leaving him unharmed but shaken. Throughout the early 20th century, reports surfaced of the dog causing cars to stop abruptly before just vanishing. In the 1960s, a couple attempted to befriend the Snarley Yow. They gained his trust. It started to get close to them. They got a collar on it, and when they tried to put a leash on it, it took off. It fled, and then just disappeared right in front of their eyes. In 1976, motorists in Frederick County, Maryland, reported hitting a dog-like creature with glowing eyes, only for it to vanish upon investigation. They got out of the car, they saw it there for a second, and it just turned to a shadow, and poof, it was gone. From the late 1970s to the present day, encounters with Snarley Yows have continued, with residents encountering them in yards, drivers believing they have hit them on roads, and hikers spotting ghostly apparitions of dogs. Despite encounters with them, no instance of a Snarley Yow mortally wounding someone has been documented. Another story I read was about a guy who was walking down the roads at night. He heard a dog run up alongside of him, so he put his hand down to pet the dog, and there's nothing there. So he looks to each side, there's no dog. He looks behind him, no dog. He can hear it walking next to him. He can hear it panting. So he speeds up, the dog speeds up. He slows down, the dog slows down. He's looking around, there's no dog. He comes up to a bend in the road, I think where he can see town. As soon as he gets to that turn, it stops, just vanishes. These are very reminiscent of stories I hear from the UK of black dogs. I think they call them big black dogs, ghostly black dogs, devil dogs, something like that. But they're shadowy beings. Sometimes they're just seen as a shadow. Sometimes they're seen as a more physical creature. Sometimes they're the size of a normal dog. Sometimes they're massive. People will see them on the road. Sometimes people see them, they'll be in the road, they'll make them stop. And it turns out that if they would have kept going, they would have drove over a bridge that was out, or they would have been hit by a car that was coming around the corner on the wrong side. Those stories are really weird. I'm going to look more into those. But that's what this Snarley Yow kind of reminds me of, an American version of the UK's black dogs. Next, let's talk about Pennsylvania's most unique, I think, cryptid. We're going to give it that. I'm going to give it the most unique cryptid moniker. It deserves it. The poor little Squonk. The Squonk is the only cryptid I think I've ever seen that has a Latin scientific name. the Lacrimacorpus dissolvens. It's a legendary creature deeply ingrained in the folklore of northern Pennsylvania, particularly in the hemlock forests. Originating in the late 19th century during Pennsylvania's prominence in the timber and hunting industries, the squonk has become a subject of fascination and empathy due to its peculiar characteristics. The earliest written account in William T. Cox's Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods from 1910. I got the book. I got the digital version. I thought, I'm going to read this whole thing about the squonk. I read the whole chapter. The squonk has its own chapter. The whole book is about cryptids of North America from the early 1900s. Fascinating. Unfortunately, every chapter is only 2 paragraphs. So the book is really short. So this is the entry in the book of the squonk.
Lacrimacorpus dissolvens. The range of the squonk is very limited. Few people outside of Pennsylvania have ever heard of the quaint beast, which is said to be fairly common in the hemlock forests of that state. The squonk is of a very retiring disposition, generally traveling about at twilight and dusk. Because of its misfitting skin, which is covered with warts and moles, it is always unhappy. In fact, it is said, by people who are best able to judge, to be the most morbid of beasts. Hunters who are good at tracking are able to follow a squonk by its tears-stained trail, for the animal weeps constantly. When cornered, an escape seems impossible, or when surprised and frightened, it may even dissolve itself in tears. Squonk hunters are most successful on frosty moonlight nights. When tears are shed slowly and the animal dislikes moving about, it may then be heard weeping under the boughs of dark hemlock trees. Mr. J.P. Ventling, formerly of Pennsylvania, but now at St. Anthony Park, Minnesota, had a disappointing experience with a squonk near Mont de Alto. He made a clever capture by mimicking the squonk and inducing it to hop into a sack, in which he was carrying it home, when suddenly the burden lightened and the weeping ceased. Wentling unslung the sack and looked in. There was nothing but tears and bubbles.
The squonk's physical attributes, including its homely appearance and tear-stained trails, contribute to its scientific name, which translates to dissolves into tears. Despite its unattractive features and apparent low intelligence, the squonk is surprisingly elusive, as the description you just heard states. That makes it challenging to capture. Various accounts, including those found in Fearsome Creatures and American Myths, Legends, and Tall Tales, recount individuals who have managed to capture the squonk, only to find it had dissolved into a puddle of tears. Even American folklore icon Paul Bunyan encountered a squonk. I don't remember that, but apparently he did, highlighting its rarity and the astonishment it evokes among those who encounter it. However, the squonk's fate remains consistent, as it dissolves into tears when captured, leaving behind only salt water and bubbles. Despite its tragic disposition, the squonk has received attention in modern pop culture, with references in songs by bands like Steely Dan and Genesis, elevating its status from a pitiful creature to an emblem of isolation and vulnerability. So remember, encountering a squonk in the woods is a rare occurrence, but if you happen upon one, it's essential to appreciate its unique beauty and perhaps offer a word of kindness to live with its spirits. Now, how do you know when you see a squonk? They're kind of pig-like. They look a little bit like a pig, but they got real, wrinkly, loose skin. Think like what are those dogs? Those dogs with the really loose skin. I can't remember. Like that, but looser. And they got moles and warts. And I think one foot is webbed, so it always swims in a circle. Like this thing is they're just pathetic. And they know it, so they cry. So if you see this thing that's just looks like a stubby little ball of flesh with warts and it's crying, that's a squonk. Say something nice to it. It's had a rough day. Although, it does have its own festival. Johnstown, PA has Squonkapalooza every year. And it's still going. August 10th, 2024, Squonkapalooza. I might see if I can make it out there for Squonkapalooza. That sounds fun. I guess I'll learn more about the squonk. Interesting to note that Johnstown is a mere 40 miles west of our next cryptid, Ray. We're going into lake monsters. Raystown Ray, I've heard about for a few years. I've actually been to Raystown. Really, really cool lake. I'm going to give a little bit of information about the lake before we get into Ray himself. But it's a unique lake because the way they dammed the river, the Juniata River, is really windy. It meanders through the mountain, like through this ravine. So it looks like a snake from above. It's really cool. And I think that's what drew me to it. I went out there. I think I originally planned to go up to the Catskills. They were having horrible weather forecast, high winds, really bad lightning storms, not something you want to be up in the mountains for. So I decided to go like southwest to try to avoid the storms. And I went down, camped at Trout Creek State Park for a few days, did some kayaking, checked out the area, learned a little bit more about Ray. And when I saw the lake and I saw how modern it is, I thought there's no way that there's a lake monster in here. Seeing how shallow the Juniata River is, sure, the lake is really deep. That's just because they put a big dam up. After reading more about it, now I don't know. I didn't avoid the weather, unfortunately, on that trip. I did almost get hit by a tornado. I had to bug out quickly, and I just barely made it to safety before I got hit with high winds and rain I couldn't see. It was bad. But let's get into Raystown. So a little bit of history about Raystown Lake. The construction of Raystown Dam, originally in 1905 by George Ernest and Warren Brown Simpson, initiated significant changes for Huntington County, Pennsylvania, both economically and physically. Initially conceived for hydroelectric power, the dam's development led to the formation of Raystown Lake in 1972. While it attracted Italian immigrants who aided in its construction, the subsequent cottage development sparked controversy itself, particularly regarding the proposals for a new high-level dam that threatened existing properties. However, the dam's flood control capabilities and private enterprise origins paved the way for further expansion, shaping the region's landscape and economy. The completion of the current Raystown Dam in 1972 marked a shift towards flood control, tourism promotion, and recreation. While flood control remained its primary objective, the dam also aimed to enhance tourism and recreational activities, with a flood storage capacity that significantly reduced flood stages along the Juniata and Susquehanna rivers. The dam's recreational features, including the creation of a vast lake and marina facilities like Seven Points Marina, attracted millions of visitors annually. Despite controversies surrounding its hydroelectric power aspect and the covering of historical landmarks, the dam's completion and subsequent dedication in 1974 solidified its place as a pivotal feature in Huntington County's history and landscape. And it really is unique. It really, when you see it from Google Maps, just go into Google Maps, go into satellite view, type in Raystown Lake. It's interesting. That's a lake. It just looks like a big river that's kind of starts and ends like abruptly, but it's just the way that they dammed it up. Now, for decades, Raystown Lake harbored a tantalizing secret: the elusive creature known as Raystown Ray. From old photographs depicting a shadowy figure lurking beneath the surface to first-hand accounts of boaters encountering sudden turbulence and peculiar sightings, the legend of Raystown Ray has persisted, captivating the imagination of locals and visitors alike. The tale gains credence with the emergence of the first known photograph of Ray, captured by a local fisherman scanning the lake's expanse from the shores of Huntington County. This visual evidence only serves to fuel speculation and intrigue surrounding the mysterious inhabitant of the lake. Intriguingly, at the time of the writing of the article that I got this from, managing director of Raystown Lake, Dwight Beal, acknowledges the existence of this cryptid, dubbing it Raystown own Punxsutawney Phil, who is the state's resident meteorologist groundhog. I'm sure you've heard of Punxsutawney Phil, Groundhog Day, due to its purported seasonal appearances, particularly in April. So that's when all the occurrences begin every year, is in April. People start to see, well, if they're going to see Ray, it usually starts in April. That's usually when the ice goes away. Furthermore, wildlife biologist Jeff Krause offers his professional insight, suggesting that Ray is probably an herbivore, akin to manatees, thus alleviating concerns regarding potential threat to swimmers and boaters. When I read stuff like this, it makes me think this is a publicity stunt to get people to come look for the lake monster. But people keep seeing things. The excitement surrounding Raystown grows as testimonies from eyewitnesses flood in, with some fortunate individuals even managing to capture photographic evidence. The sheer size of Ray, estimated to be 50 to 60 feet in length, adds to the mystique. The first recorded sighting of Ray actually occurred in 1962 at Old Raystown Dam, according to the Huntington County Visitors Bureau. In 1971, the dam was destroyed to create the 8,300-acre man-made Raystown Lake, which is as deep as 185 feet in some places. The Sci-Fi Channel, their show Fact or Fake to Paranormal Files, they investigated Ray in 2010. I remember this show. I remember watching it. Armed with cutting-edge technology, the team embarked on comprehensive exploration of Raystown Lake, conducting night dives, utilizing sonar recordings, and even employing unconventional baiting strategies. I don't remember what those were. While their findings remained inconclusive, they did validate the credibility of eyewitness sightings, lending credence to the possibility of a large creature inhabiting the depths of the lake. One particularly chilling first-hand account comes from a lone camper who recounted a spine-tingling encounter with Raystown Ray during an early morning swim. It went like this.
It was back in early May, around 2005 or 2006. I was camping at the Susquehanna campgrounds at Raystown Lake. Having camped there many years in the past with my family, this time I was alone. I had never heard about Ray. As had been my normal routine, first thing in the morning, around 7 a.m., I would go for a swim on the south side of the camp area called the Bow. This was the first time there was no one else in the area. Houseboats like to come there because of the no-wake zone. As I was swimming, I looked up and saw something swimming ahead. It was coming from the larger part of that area, from my left, into the smaller cove area. When I saw it, I stopped and tread water watching. I couldn't figure out what it was. I first thought it was a deer or a bear, because of the wake following after it seemed big. Then it did something I've never heard about a deer or bear doing. It dived down and then came up again while swimming straight. When it came up, it noticed me treading water and turned towards me and started coming my way. I stayed treading water until it got about halfway to me, and then it dived under again while coming towards me. That's when I took off swimming back towards the campground area. Because I thought whatever it was could outswim me, I decided to go to the shore, but could not get totally out of the water, due to the high bank along the water. After standing, with a 30-pound rock in my hands, what seemed forever, I noticed the thing swam back up to where I first saw it. I waited thinking it would come up to the shore and climb out, but it never did. I swam back to camp area and never went back in until the next year when my son and I went camping. I don't scare easily, but this got my attention.
As the legend of Raystown Ray continues to captivate hearts and minds, one thing remains certain. The waters of Raystown Lake hold secrets yet to be unveiled. The elusive creature lurking beneath the surface may forever remain a tantalizing enigma. Another sighting from August of 2008 by Penny 4. This one seemed a little bit scarier. Here's what she had to say.
One warm, still evening, during late August of 2008, we decided to drift the boat out offshore to do some night fishing, right at the bend of where we camp at the Sonoy sites, that is just around the corner from 7 Points. Well, we were using our new fish drawing light. It is neon green, longer than a fluorescent light. waterproof of course, and guaranteed to draw in fish when dropped overboard with a rope and a weight to pull it down to about 30 or so foot. Anyway, we were using the light, fishing in the stillest water, like black glass, so calm, no breezes, just quiet. Well, along about 11 to 12 p.m., we were deciding to head back. We were just sitting there on the stern talking and enjoying the calmness of the warm night. All of a sudden, from out in the middle of the lake, there was this whooshing sound. I thought it might be a boat, but there were no lights, no motor sound, just the sound of water swooshing straight towards us. He grabbed the spotlight, and about 100 feet from our boat, there was something, looked like an upside-down canoe, rushing through the water, at us. He told me, "Grab that fish light, now, get it up." I had actually forgotten about it. I grabbed for the rope and started pulling like crazy. He kept the spotlight on the thing, as I grabbed hand over hand, trying to get the underwater light up and in the boat. As soon as I got the light up, I turned it off, and stood there with him watching this thing get closer. It came within 30 feet of the boat, when it went completely under. Where it went, I have no idea. But it left a wake that shook us in the boat. We rocked enough to almost push us to shore. I tell you what, we headed back to camp, and sat in the RV drinking tea, and tried to make sense of it. There are no fish that act like that are native to the lake. Not even eels break the water like that. And definitely, none that big. We know fish at the lake can get huge, but they lay at the bottom. They don't even hunt at the surface. After seeing this sight, we wonder if this may have been a Raystown Ray sighting. We have heard the swooshing in the water late at night, from our campsites on shore, at various times of the year. And you can only see the water breaking under the light of a bright moon. It makes me think that the cove by the Sonoy campsites may be a play area for whatever it is.
Now, Raystown Ray could very well be eels. It could be, there are large carp. I don't know if they have sturgeon, but I guess it's not impossible. And sturgeon get quite large. Now, I'm not saying that's what people are seeing all the time, but when I was in Florida, and you see something like a manatee, which is, it could be up to 10 to 12 feet long. When you see that come up out of the water, it's startling. They're big. Once you realize what they are, it's not that much to be worried about, but it can freak you out. There are things it could be, but is it something that lived in the Juniata River that is just growing to the size of its container? Maybe it was something that was never known to get big because it lived in smaller water, but once they dammed the river and it's got unlimited space basically to grow, now it's growing. And that's what we're seeing. It's just a species that we didn't know could get that big. Maybe we'll know someday. I don't know. It's very interesting. And I'd like to go back and see if I could see something. It seems like a lot of stuff happens near the 7 Points. And I went to 7 Points. I didn't notice anything. But I also didn't kayak there. I kayaked further south. So maybe I'll go back and I'll check out that area a little bit more. Go there, do some like night shore walking or even kayaking. But while we're talking about lake monsters, let's continue with the water monsters. And we'll go, maybe an hour and a half north of Raystown Lake. And we will talk about the Kettle Creek Monster, also known as the West Branch Dugong, the Susquehanna Seal, and possibly Susquehanna's Mystery Thing. Now, water monsters have long been the subject of fascination and speculation, with famous examples like the Loch Ness Monster and the lesser-known South Bay Bessie, which is a Lake Erie water monster. I didn't include it here because most of the stories that I hear about it come from the Ohio shores, not from Pennsylvania. So I didn't include South Bay Bessie. Also, Raystown Ray, one of the lesser-known lake monsters. Among these enigmatic creatures is the Kettle Creek Monster, a mysterious entity that has intrigued residents of Pennsylvania's Clinton County since the 1890s. Referred to also, like I said, as the West Branch Dugong, and more recently as the Susquehanna Seal. Sightings of this elusive creature were primarily reported around Kettle Creek, though encounters were occasionally reported further south along the Susquehanna River. Accounts of the creature varied widely, They usually do, offering vague descriptions ranging from likening it to suggesting it resembled various types of dinosaurs. I think one report said it looked like a cuttlefish. So a lot of people saw different things. Speculation about its origins included theories of it being a sea creature swept inland during a flood, or a relic from a prehistoric era, or that there were underwater caves that connected it out to larger waterways. The legend gained traction through newspaper articles in the late 1800s, with reports suggesting the creature's nocturnal howls. People would hear it howling in the water. And its occasional interactions with lumbermen's rafts. It would actually flip them over, or something would flip them over. They would blame it on the Kettle Creek Monster, leading to speculation about its potential size and behavior. In recent times, a new theory has emerged linking the Kettle Creek Monster to the Heinerpetten, a prehistoric tetrapod discovered to have lived in the area around 365 million years ago. This intriguing connection has sparked renewed interest in the legend, prompting speculation about the creature's identity and its potential survival into modern times. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, sightings and unexplained sounds in the Susquehanna River continue to fuel curiosity and debate, adding to the allure of water cryptids and the mysteries they hold within the vast aquatic ecosystem. Recently, in Northumberland County, near the confluence of the Susquehanna River, reports of another mysterious aquatic entity known as Susquehanna's mystery thing have surfaced. Documented sightings, including those by outdoor guide Ken Maurer, described the creature as resembling a small submarine, creating noticeable wakes and waves as it moves through the water. Maurer himself recounted multiple encounters with the creature, noting its tendency to vanish from sight before being clearly observed. These accounts have sparked debate and intrigue, with some questioning their validity, while others recall similar sightings in the area. Now, whether this enigmatic entity is a new phenomenon or a relocated Kettle Creek Monster, Susquehanna seal, from Clinton County remains uncertain. When I first read about this Susquehanna mystery thing, I hadn't read the second article which made this connection. And I immediately went, what? They're the same thing. Those waters are very close. They connect. Kettle Creek. And Kettle Creek, I've been to Kettle Creek State Park. That's another area that did get flooded. So something could have washed in there. And that got flooded a lot. I remember, because the park office sits way up the side of the hill. And as you drive up to the park office, there's posts there where the high water marks were. And that water was 40 or 50 feet deep at some point. And it gets wide quickly. So that's a lot of water in there. So maybe something did get washed in there, or maybe something got washed out of there. Very interesting, though. But now they're seeing something in the Susquehanna River, which maybe there are connecting caves, underwater caves that connect all these places. And it's all the same creatures. Who knows? But we're going to stay in Clinton County now for our next cryptid. And this was a new one to me. I'd never heard of this one before I started doing this research. The Giwoggle. Giwoggle. The official monster of Clinton County, Pennsylvania. Officially, the official monster of Clinton County, Pennsylvania. I mean, what about the Kettle Creek Monster? That's in Clinton County. Come on now. This has been a legendary figure dating back to the mid-1800s. Its recognition by the government of Clinton County on July 21st, 2011 solidified its status as a local myth. Descriptions of the Giwoggle vary, again, but it's often depicted as a hybrid creature with a wolf-like base, standing upright about 6 feet tall. Instead of conventional paws, it has bird claws for front limbs and horse hooves for hind legs, making it difficult to track. According to legend, the Giwoggle was believed to be an artificial werewolf, conjured or summoned by witches, particularly in West Keating Township. Tales of the Giwoggle were passed down to generations by people like Belle Confer, who recounted these stories to her grandchildren. Her grandson, George Roan, later documented these tales in Keystone Folklore Quarterly. The Giwoggle was often associated with pranks and minor mischief, typically directed at farmers who had offended local women believed to be witches. It wasn't violent, though. It preferred instead to cause disturbances and vandalize property. So if you offended a witch, they would send this werewolf thing to your farm and it would just mess your stuff up, make a minor inconvenience. It wouldn't hurt you. It's big, I'm going to knock over your stuff. It seems like it could do more. In these stories, a hero figure named Loop Hill Ike often appeared to counteract the spells cast by witches and confront creatures like the Giwoggle. Loop Hill Ike was based on the real-life Isaac Gaines. He was portrayed as a fearless paranormal expert who was unafraid to confront supernatural threats. Gaines, now buried in the First McGonigal Cemetery, was known for his purported ability to deal with witches and ghosts in the Keating area. Interestingly, sightings of bipedal wolves near the Clinton County border, where this First McGonigal Cemetery are, have led some to speculate that the Giwoggle may still be lurking near the grave of its old adversary. The Giwoggle, is it immortal and it's missing its friend? Like it knew it could never be hurt by this guy, and it's like, oh man, that was fun. Despite its rural origins, the Giwoggle has even been associated with urban sightings, with reports of similar creatures observed in Lock Haven in 1909 during a period of panic over our next cryptid, the Jersey Devil. Newspapers at the time speculated these sightings might have been attributed to the Giwoggle venturing into town in search of prey, adding to the creature's enigmatic reputation. Now, one interesting point that people would make about the Giwoggle is, why did these witches summon these things and then just let them go? They're just like, hey, go mess up that farmer stuff. All right, go live in the woods. Couldn't you done something to help it out? That's kind of rude. The Jersey Devil in PA. What's that about? That shouldn't happen, right? In 1909, the Pennsylvania wilds became the unexpected backdrop for sightings of the infamous Jersey Devil. While the devil, or the Leeds Devil, as it's sometimes known, predominantly associated with New Jersey, its presence was felt in Pennsylvania, causing a wave of panic and intrigue. Now, in this area, interestingly enough, near Williamsport and Lock Haven, up the river a little ways, is the town of Jersey Shore. Jersey Shore got its name during the lumber and the timber industry days, because as lumberjacks would move into the area to find work, they would stick together. So a bunch of lumberjacks from New Jersey came to the area, and they all stayed in a camp on one side of the river. And the locals of Williamsport mockingly called that Jersey Shore. That's the Jersey Shore, because that's where all the people from New Jersey live. And the name stuck. But how interesting that right in that same area, in the early 1900s, there's sightings of the Jersey Devil. The legend of the Jersey Devil traces back to the early 18th century, with tales suggesting it was born to Mother Leeds, hence the Leeds Devil name, in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Cursed to become a monstrous creature with bat wings, hooves, and a kangaroo-like body, and I remember that. Despite its mythical origins, sightings of the Jersey Devil persist, often leading to periods of heightened anxiety, as was the case in 1909. Reports of the Jersey Devil sightings spread from New Jersey into central Pennsylvania, reaching as far as Williamsport and Lock Haven, which are now part of the Pennsylvania wilds, and right down the river from Jersey Shore. The Clinton Democrat, a newspaper, broke the story on January 28th of 1909, detailing mysterious footprints found in the snow in Williamsport, resembling those of a creature hopping back and forth over a tennis net. Subsequent sightings occurred in Lock Haven, where night watchman E.W. Rogers reported seeing the creature flying overhead, describing it as having fiery eyes, a long neck, and a forked tail. Sounds like a couple other things I've heard of too. Like Mothman. That's weird. Additional sightings followed, with witnesses in Lock Haven reporting encounters with the creature, including Charles Poorman, who discovered hoof-like tracks on his roof, Henry Stricker, who observed a creature flying over the Clinton Fire Brickworks. People who said they found these odd wolf-like tracks that often, that as they went through the snow, would change to canary tracks and then back. They were shape-shifting. The final sighting on February 10th by railroad conductor William Callahan provided a glimpse of the Jersey Devil flying over the paper mill before disappearing towards the east. It was going home. Despite the flurry of sightings, the true nature of the creature remained elusive, leaving residents and authorities puzzled. The Jersey Devil's visit to Pennsylvania wilds underscored the region's allure as a tourism destination, highlighting its natural wonders and captivating landscapes, even attracting the legendary creature like the Jersey Devil itself. Now, as I was reading these reports, the one about the tracks that look like they're jumping over, back and forth, over the tennis court net, and the descriptions of it being like a kangaroo-like body, immediately made me think of the devil monkey. Now, we covered those last year. They were sighted in Pennsylvania. Many states had devil monkey sightings. Some people reported them having kangaroo-like legs, but also with a beaver-like tail, not a forked tail. So there's some similarities there. And here's where you start to look at some of these things. And you got like the Giwoggle, and not the Squonk, but the Snarley Yow, the Giwoggle, the Jersey Devil, and the next one, that all have similar features. What are these things? So up next, we've got one that sounds kind of cuddly. That's the Waterford Sheepman. Don't get lulled into a false sense of security with this guy. He is not woolly and cute. In the early 1970s, so this is 50 years ago, the rural town of Waterford, Pennsylvania, was plagued by sightings and encounters with a terrifying creature known as the Waterford Sheepman, or simply Goatman. Every article I read talking about the Sheepman/Goatman used the same word to describe it. Every single one. This abominable being. They always use the word abominable. Not cute and cuddly like you'd expect a sheep. This abominable being lurked in farm fields, preying on unsuspecting animals, with numerous witnesses attesting to his existence. When I say preying on unsuspecting animals, it would tear them apart. Reported to be over 6 feet tall, covered in light gray fur, large canine teeth, was said to have a somewhat human form, bipedal, large horns on its head, claws for hands, and hooves for feet, reminiscent of a werewolf. Why do they call this thing the sheep man? It's a were-sheep? I did see other reports from other states of a similar creature, but theirs sounded more like a sheep, and they called it a sheep squatch. Sheep squatch. This doesn't sound like a sheep squatch. This just sounds like a werewolf. This doesn't sound like a sheep or a goat man. I don't know how it got that name. Marilyn, a resident of Waterford during that time, recalls firsthand encounters with this creature. She vividly remembers seeing it darting across the road near an old sawmill, and again while driving home one night when it ran across the road and into the woods. Richard Galbraith, another native of Waterford, grew up hearing warnings about the sheepman and was cautioned to avoid certain areas lest he fall victim to the creature's violent attacks. And then we've got Herb Kinney. And Herb Kinney gave this story. He was a local businessman, and this is his story here.
It was always said the sheepman lived in a cave on Baghdad Road. He was known to frequent the covered bridge southeast of town on East Street. He was said to hide up in the rafters of the old bridge and jump down and terrorize young lovers that had parked in the bridge. 2 couples from Erie were traveling into the bridge late one summer night in a dark blue Ford Mustang convertible with the top down. It had started to sprinkle, so they pulled inside the bridge to put the top up. When they were attacked, the boys fought off the creature and peeled out, filling the bridge with smoke from the burning rubber of their tires. The roof to the car was damaged, ripped, torn, and mangled to the point it had to be replaced. All 4 of the young people insisted the incident really happened, telling the tale to their parents. The parents fearing embarrassment and would not allow any police report to be filed.
So the legend of the Sheepman instills fear in the residents of Waterford, with stories and sightings circulating throughout the countryside. However, as the 1970s came to a close, the sightings ceased, and the legend gradually faded into memory. Although I did read a story from, I want to say his page is called the Pennsylvania Rambler, and he was talking about he had gone to Waterford, take pictures to explore, but had not heard about this covered bridge because the bridge had been closed. So after the fact, after he had left, he had heard about the bridge and he had come back for another day to explore. And when he gets there, he comes across these kids who ask him if he's there to look into the sheep man or the goat man. And he had never heard of it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And they're confused that he doesn't know the story of the goat man. So they tell him about the story. And then one of the kids says that he's actually seen him, that he lives under the bridge, and that he saw the goat man. And I don't know if he saw him up in the rafters or saw him come up from underneath the bridge. I can't remember which, but described it very much like other people have described it. So more sightings, or now the one kid did say that, he can't believe anything he says because he was drunk. But I mean, you gotta be pretty drunk to hallucinate a goat man. Gotta be pretty drunk. Now, despite this passage of time, the tales of the sheepman continue to evoke a sense of unease and mystery. Obviously, this thing was attacking people and tearing apart farm animals. It serves as a reminder to the town's eerie past and the enduring power of local folklore. So that's the sheepman. Pretty brutal. Let's talk about something that's a little less brutal. That was brutal. So last but not least, we've got the Albatwitch. This is another one I'd never heard of before I started looking into lesser known cryptids. The Albatwitch, the heart of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Curious legend that captures the imaginations of locals and visitors alike. The tale of the Albatwitch. Standing at around 4 feet tall, this furry creature with piercing yellow eyes has become a symbol of mystery and intrigue in the region. The name Albatwitch is believed to be a Pennsylvania Dutch English compound word for apple snitch, as these little creatures apparently love apples. Love them. That's their thing, apples. If you look at the German origins of the name, it comes out as apple elf or apple spirit. The legends speak of how the Albatwitches, the Albatwitch would oftentimes steal apples from picnickers. And then they'd eat the apples in the trees and then throw the cores back at the startled onlookers. These little things, these little mini Bigfoots can come out, steal your apples, eat them, and then throw them back at you. They kind of, it's a lot better than getting mauled to death by a goat man, but it's still pretty rude. So every year now, on Albatwitch Day, children gather to ceremoniously throw apples into the woods, as either as like an offering or like a playful nod to the creature's appetite. But they've organized this Albatwitch Day. It was organized by Vera and Rick Fisher, an author known for chronicling ghost sightings in Lancaster and New York counties. Albatwitch Day has become a community tradition, blending folklore with festivity. Now, Rick Fisher had his own encounter with an Albatwitch, where he saw it in the road. It was crossing the road. He turned on his headlights. It looked at him, and then it just popped out of existence near this spot called Chickie's Rock. Apparently, a lot of weird things happen near Chickie's Rock. Now, Fisher's account is supported by testimonies from others who claim to have glimpsed similar creatures in the vicinity, reinforcing the notion that Chickie's Rock is a hotspot for paranormal activity. Now, the description of an Albatwitch, they say 4 feet. His original sighting, he said it was about 5 feet tall, and it was really thin. So they say it's not a juvenile Bigfoot. It's similar to a Bigfoot, but it's a lot smaller. Its proportions are more human-like, where a Bigfoot's more kind of ape or gorilla-like, bigger, real thick neck, cone-shaped head, things like that. The Albatwitch, he said, stick thin, but covered in long, shaggy hair, long arms, long fingers, but these bright yellow eyes. Not so much that they were glowing, because he saw them in like the reflection of the headlights, but it just looked at him, just like a skinny dude with long arms and yellow eyes looking at him, and then it just, like I said, it just disappeared. So an interesting, maybe an offshoot of Bigfoot, of Sasquatch. It just has a taste for apples. Local Native American groups have stories involving a similar creature, if not the same one. The Susquehannocks reportedly painted images that match the description of these creatures on their war shields, and the Algonquin told tales of a small hairy hominid creature called the Megamuwisus. The Megamuwisus. I'm not even going to try to spell that for you. While the Albatwitch sightings are primarily confined to Lancaster County, the allure of cryptids extends statewide. Obviously, we've got a lot of stories of different things. Pennsylvania boasts a reputation as the third best place in the U.S. for Bigfoot sightings, with numerous reports and enthusiasts eager to uncover the truth. Organizations like Pennsylvania's Bigfoot Investigations and the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society serve as hubs for enthusiasts sharing stories, tips, and detailed sightings from across the Commonwealth. Now, I have to look now, because there is the Bigfoot research, we're going to be BFRO, and then the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society is the other one, where they've got the interactive maps. And I got to start looking down in that area and see if I can find these small Bigfoot, these Albatwitches. I've never heard the name before, but maybe people aren't calling them that in these reports. So I'm going to look into more of those. That's a lot of research. So I might have more stories about Albatwitches coming. Despite the skepticism surrounding these reports, the fascination with local legends like the Albatwitch and Bigfoot continues to bring communities together. Albatwitch Day festivals draw thousands of visitors, offering trolley rides, paranormal speakers, live music, and more, celebrating the region's rich folklore and cultural heritage. The origins of the Albatwitch remain shrouded in mystery. Vera Fisher and others speculated about the creature's connection to the Susquehanna River, pondering its significance as a potential food or water source. And as they unravel the enigma, one thing remains certain: the natural beauty of the Susquehanna River and its surrounding landscapes beckons exploration, inviting adventurers to delve into its trails, launch kayaks, discover historic landmarks like the Susquehanna petroglyphs. So there are interesting things in that area that could be drawing cryptids to it. There's a lot of history, a lot of natural history in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of mines in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of waterways. This is where the last glacier stopped, right across Pennsylvania. There's a lot of things that could be creating, if cryptids are paranormal, and we're talking about different energies and things like that, there are reasons why Pennsylvania and these regions would be hotspots for that. That takes a completely different kind of thought process, though, to look into. And a lot of people don't want to think that way. I say keep your mind open, and there's so many things that we don't know. And I probably say this in a lot of episodes. There's so much that we don't know that I don't like to just say, no, that can't be. Like, there's other things that these could be. All right. I mean, an Albatwitch could just be possibly an escaped chimpanzee. All right. Could be. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it could be. There's things they could be. Water monsters there's a lot of things they could be. And sometimes, look, I've kayaked a lot. I spent time on big water, on small water. Sometimes your depth perception is off when you're looking in the water. Or if you see something making a wake, it looks bigger because of the way the water is rippling. There's things that it could be. Even if you're on the water a lot, you can see things incorrectly, interpret them wrong. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm saying you got to keep an open mind. But the same token, these things people are seeing something. Reports are coming in of something. And If it's 1 or 2, then maybe it's nothing. But when you're getting hundreds and thousands of reports of these different things, they can't all be wrong. People are seeing something. Will we ever know what those somethings are? Maybe not. But don't close your mind off to it, because we just never know. We're not as smart as we think we are. I hope you guys enjoyed these stories. Pennsylvania has a lot more to offer with the weird stuff, so I'll be touching on more of that in the future. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to touch on. It doesn't have to be Pennsylvania. It could be anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter. I'll look into it. But since I'm from Pennsylvania, I do like to go in and touch on these stories every now and then. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, if you've got any ideas, if you've got anything that you want to see me look into, reach out, podcast@primitiveintelligence.com. Love to hear from you guys. I love getting the comments on the videos. If you're listening on a podcast app, you can't really comment. Maybe you can. I don't know if I see those, depending on the app. Spotify, there's a spot. What did you think of this episode? You can go in there. You can leave a note. You can also leave a spot for voice messages. That's awesome. And if you're liking the podcast and you want to show a little support, like if you're listening on Spotify, you might hear ads. I don't put those in. That's all Spotify. Same thing on YouTube. I don't put ads in. That's all YouTube. I get nothing for those. If you want to show a little support, I'll put a link down in the bottom. I've got a Primitive Intelligence t-shirt. It's got the logo on it. It's pretty cool. Go check it out. If you want one, they're there to buy. If you don't, no big deal. But appreciate it if you at least go look at them. And that's all I got. That's going to do it for me for this week. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. See ya.